February 7, 1986. A U.S. Air Force cargo plane waited on the tarmac at Haiti's International Airport. Under the cover of darkness, Jean-Claude "Baby Doc" Duvalier, his wife Michelle Bennett, and their entourage loaded 26 suitcases of cash, jewels, and priceless artifacts stolen from the Haitian people. As they boarded, gunfire and celebrations erupted across Port-au-Prince. After 29 years of Duvalier rule, 15 under François and 14 under Jean-Claude, Haiti had finally broken its chains. But this wasn't just a dictator fleeing. It was the carefully managed transfer of a problem that had become inconvenient for powers both inside and outside Haiti. This video examines the dramatic collapse of Jean-Claude Duvalier's regime between 1985 and 1986, a period when decades of accumulated suffering finally exploded into mass resistance that forced one of history's most entrenched dictatorships from power. Understanding this pivotal moment reveals both the power of popular mobilization and how external forces attempted to control Haiti's transition to protect their interests. Historical context. By 1985, Haiti was a pressure cooker of accumulated grievances. Jean-Claude's marriage to Michelle Bennett in 1980 had alienated traditional Duvalierists while flaunting obscene wealth amid growing poverty. The economy had collapsed under the weight of corruption and mismanagement, with unemployment reaching 60%. Stress was ravaging the population, falsely blamed on Haitians by the international media, adding stigma to suffering. Meanwhile, international dynamics were shifting. The Reagan administration, once supportive of Duvalier as an anti-communist ally, began seeing him as a liability as Cold War priorities evolved. Most significantly, a new generation of Haitians had come of age who hadn't experienced the paralyzing terror of François Duvalier's rule. They were educated through Catholic radio programs, politicized by the Pope's 1983 visit, and connected to international solidarity networks. Unlike their parents, raised in fear, they were willing to risk everything for change. The spark in Gonaives. The uprising began not in Port-au-Prince, but in Gonaives, Haiti's city of independence, where the Declaration of Haitian Freedom was first signed in 1804. On November 28, 1985, soldiers opened fire on student protesters demanding better educational conditions, killing 3 young people, including 19-year-old Jean-Robert Sius and 20-year-old Mackensen Michel. Rather than instilling fear, these murders triggered unprecedented outrage. As news spread through radio broadcasts, vigils transformed into protests, and protests became citywide rebellions. Unlike previous isolated incidents, these killings occurred at a moment when multiple forces, religious leaders, youth organizations, and rural movements, had created networks ready to mobilize. Within days, the protests spread to Cap Haitien, Les Cayes, and other cities, catching the regime off guard with their spontaneous coordination. The attempted containment. Duvalier's initial response followed his father's playbook. Violent repression combined with symbolic concessions. Security forces attacked protesters, killing dozens. Simultaneously, Duvalier announced superficial reforms, dismissing unpopular officials, reducing prices on staple goods, and promising vague political liberalization. But these tactics, effective in earlier years, no longer worked. The demonstrators weren't demanding adjustments to the system, but its complete dismantling, chanting, "À bas Duvalier," down with Duvalier. By January 1986, protests had reached Port-au-Prince itself. When Duvalier declared a state of siege on January 31st, cutting off international communications and imposing martial law, protesters responded by building barricades throughout the capital. The final escalation came when security forces fired into crowds attending Mass, killing worshippers inside churches, an action that destroyed any remaining legitimacy the regime might have claimed. The international pivot. As the crisis deepened, the Reagan administration made a calculated decision to abandon Duvalier while attempting to preserve the system he headed. U.S. officials, led by Secretary of State George Shultz, concluded that Duvalier's continued rule might lead to a complete revolution that could threaten American economic and strategic interests. On January 30th, 1986, the State Department announced it was reviewing aid to Haiti, a clear signal that U.S. support was wavering. Behind the scenes, American diplomats began approaching Haitian military leaders, suggesting that sacrificing Duvalier could preserve their positions and prevent more radical change. This intervention wasn't about supporting Haitian democracy, but managing the transition to protect American interests. When the U.S. arranged Duvalier's flight to France on an American military aircraft, it wasn't aiding revolution but performing a controlled demolition of a liability while preserving the underlying power structure. The final days. As February began, Duvalier's position became untenable. The military, sensing the regime's collapse, began hedging its bets. Longtime allies in the business community opened back channels to opposition figures. Most significantly, the U.S. ambassador delivered a clear message: Washington would no longer support his presidency. On February 7, 1986, after a final meeting with American officials, Duvalier and his family were escorted to the airport with U.S. assistance. They boarded an American C-141 transport plane with millions in stolen wealth, heading for exile in France. As dawn broke, Haitians poured into the streets in celebration, attacking symbols of the regime, including the headquarters of the Tontons Macoutes. The 29-year nightmare of Duvalierism appeared to be over, but the structures it had created, military dominance, economic exploitation, and foreign influence, remained intact, setting the stage for the turbulent decades that followed. The incomplete revolution. While Duvalier's departure represented an extraordinary victory for popular mobilization, the revolution remained incomplete. The transitional government, led by General Henri Namphy, maintained many elements of the Duvalierist system while excluding the grassroots organizations that had driven the uprising. The U.S. quickly recognized this military junta, revealing that its issue had been with Duvalier personally, not with authoritarian governance in Haiti. Most critically, the economic structures that had enriched the elite while impoverishing the majority remained unchanged. When Haitians demanded dechukai, uprooting, of the entire Duvalierist system, they found that removing the dictator was easier than dismantling the dictatorship. The military, the economic elite, and foreign interests quickly reconfigured to maintain their privileges while making minimal concessions to popular demands. Present day. Impact. The 1986 uprising established patterns that continue shaping Haiti's political landscape. The power of popular mobilization to force seemingly immovable leaders from office has been demonstrated repeatedly, from Duvalier to more recent presidents. Yet each successful mobilization has faced the same challenge: removing individuals without transforming systems. The rapid reconsolidation of power by the military and economic elite after Duvalier's fall helps explain why subsequent democratic transitions have struggled to deliver meaningful change. Perhaps most significantly, the U.S. role in managing Duvalier's departure established a template for external powers appearing to support democratic movements while working to control outcomes favorable to their interests. When we see international actors today positioning themselves as facilitators of Haitian political transitions, we're witnessing the continuation of dynamics established during those crucial days in February 1986. The story of Duvalier's fall challenges us to distinguish between removing dictators and dismantling dictatorial systems. The Haitian people successfully drove out one of history's most entrenched tyrants through courageous, coordinated action, demonstrating that no regime, regardless of its brutality, can withstand unified popular resistance. Yet this extraordinary achievement was followed by decades of continued struggle because the underlying structures of oppression remained intact. For the Diaspora, this history offers both inspiration and caution. Inspiration in the proven power of Haitian mobilization, and caution about the ways external powers can co-opt revolutionary moments to maintain their influence. Our liberation requires more than changing the faces in power. It demands transforming the systems that reproduce oppression, regardless of who holds office. Until we recognize and address these deeper structures, we risk repeating the pattern established in 1986. Revolutionary energy channeled into managed transitions that preserve fundamental inequalities. If this hidden history moved you, share this video to help others understand the complex dynamics of Haiti's ongoing struggle for genuine democracy. Like, subscribe, and check the link in our bio for resources on supporting Haitian-led movements focused on systemic transformation rather than mere leadership change. The truth about Duvalier's fall has been systematically obscured because acknowledging the incompleteness of that revolution would require confronting the continuing influence of those who benefited from his system. By spreading this knowledge, we honor those who risked everything in 1985 to 1986, while recognizing that their work remains unfinished. Together, we can move beyond cycles of hope and disappointment toward the fundamental transformation that Haiti's people have repeatedly demanded and deserved. Remember, 1986 was a great moment to change Haiti, but unfortunately we had the wrong leaders, only saw their interests.